Welcome to What's New in Assemblies for Fusion 360. This is the 5th video in this series, and as stated earlier, I have been on a 12-month break from Fusion 360, and this is an attempt to catch up on all the great things that the development team have been working on. But I'm going to slow down, take it easy, make sure that no man or woman is left behind, and hopefully share some tips and tricks. So with that, let's take some components and put it together. Hello everyone, my name is Lars Christensen, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Again, we're going to try to catch up on all the goodies in Fusion 360 for the last 12 months, because let's be honest, unless you are a power user, you might have missed a few of these, or maybe even wondered why the heck you want to use them. That's what we're going to try to do in this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, do me a favor, just give it a thumbs down and leave me a comment. I want to hear your opinion. And also, in the description of this video, there's a new way that you and I can connect via email. So with that, let's jump into Fusion 360. So today's topic is all about assemblies. And if you follow this series, you know that I'm not just kind of rushing through and showing you all the what's new quickly. I'm trying to kind of dial it back, give you some tips and tricks. And this is no different. If things are going a little bit too slow, then know that down in the description area, you can kind of fast forward to the different what's new items. But we're going to slow down. We're going to take a step back. And there is kind of there's kind of 2.5 different ways you can do assemblies inside of Fusion 360. And I want to make sure that you feel comfortable with all 2.5 and understand why you would use the different ones. The first one we're looking at here, this is a guitar stool that I have that I've kind of reverse engineered. And, I kind of wanted to use this as an example because I thought it was kind of funny. So what we have here is a seat, and the seat, if you zoom in a little bit, actually spins around. There's kind of like this bearing up here that makes the seat spin around. There's some legs. This model here is actually missing some hardware, and I just ran out of time. I actually have, if I open up the data panel, I actually have the hardware right here. I just never really got to install it, but that was just to kind of show off, and I don't really need to do that for any of you. But we're gonna model this chair up in 2.5 different ways, or partially, to show you the what's new, but also really just want to give you an idea about how you can model with assemblies inside of Fusion 360. So when I'm talking about that there's 2.5 ways to do it, I think it's important to just kind of understand where solid modeling is coming from. So the first one we're going to look at is what we call bottom up. And bottom up is the original way to do assemblies inside of a CAD system. See, when we first started to do solid modeling back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, whenever it was, long time ago, we started out only have part files. But anybody who's coming from, for example, SolidWorks or Inventor, you might be familiar with both part files and assembly files, because it didn't take very long, because before somebody said that, well, I want to be able to take different parts and put them together into an assembly. And the way that the CAD companies worked with this was to create this assembly file that was kind of its own deal, and then you could bring the parts in there, and then you could put them together inside the assembly. So you ended up having assembly files, and then you ended up having the part files. You can still do the same thing in Fusion, but when the developers did Fusion, well, it's a newer software. We had more functionalities, and they actually had a workaround with that where you can do it a little bit more streamlined. So I'm going to show you the different ones, and we can kind of talk our way through it. So what we're looking at here inside of Fusion is what we will call bottom up. And the idea behind bottom up is that we have all the components out here modeled up, each one individually, and then we put them together as an assembly. So I'll show you how to do that. So we're gonna go ahead here and I'm not even gonna save this one. I'm just gonna get out of this this assembly. I already saved it over here, so it doesn't really matter. We're going to create a new assembly. And the way you want to do that is we open up an empty file, and we're going to go ahead and save this file. We can call it whatever we want to call it. We can call this one up new bottom up assembly. Now, why would you ever do it this way, the old-fashioned way? This is a great way to do this if you already, as I have here, have all the components modeled up. So if you, for example, get different parts, putting them together like this is an easy way to work with it. The second way we're going to look at is top down, and we can do a mismatch of both of them. But bottom up normally works with an empty document, and then we're going to put these parts in here. So I'm going to right click on leg 1 down here, and I'm going to say insert into assembly, and now it gets brought in to the assembly, and you can see that it's linked out. It has a link here, so it's actually looking at this single part file, but have brought it into this other part file. Now you get an option when you're bringing files in like this that you can actually move them around. And we're going to use that a little bit further down the road. One of the reasons that, one thing I want to highlight is that we are in this new bottom assembly file we just created. If I turn on the origin, you will see that a new part placed in here defaults to wherever that part was originally modeled. So in our new bottom-up assembly, the origin is sitting here. This part is placed right on that origin. That might not be preferable. So many times people do want to move the part to a specific location where that origin maybe would make sense. I'm just going to do undo here to bring it back to its original place. But we're going to leave it for here right now where it originally came in down here. I'm just going to hit OK. And that first leg is put in here. Now, if I go and open up that file by itself by just double clicking on it, you will see it's the same thing. We have the history tree down here. And if again, I could turn on the origin, you will see that the origin was here for the file. And you're going to see later on how I kind of created this file. I'll close out of that again. Not going to save it. All right, we're back in bottom-up assembly. Now I'm going to bring in number 2 file. I'm going to right-click and say insert into current design. And now I'm going to bring in the second file. But you see here is one of the first dilemmas we're running into, and that is, well, when I modeled up these two sets of legs, I kind of used the same approach. This is not how I want them inside of the assembly. Now, one way we can actually work with this, what is kind of nice, is that these are kind of symmetric. So if I just grab this handle here and I move it around 90 degrees, then and hit OK, then these two are actually where I kind of want it, just the way I modeled them up. But since this is an assembly, since we brought these two components in there, nothing is tied down. Actually, everything is floating around. I can grab this part and I can just drag it over here. I can drag this over here. And that's not really what I want. I need to kind of lock it down in here. And you just saw me hit that reverse position or capture, not capture position. We're going to come back to that. So what we need to do is we need to lock these down. Now, one component needs to be grounded. It needs to kind of like have a nail in space. And I normally just select the first one I brought in. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select ground. That's now going to lock this part down. This part will not move. Now the other one will still move. Again, these capture position or revert up comes up. I'm just going to hit revert to bring it back again. So we need to lock the second one down. Now we could, of course, also just right click on that one. We could ground that one. That would actually, you know, in the end result of trying to maybe making an assembly drawing or something, that's actually not a, you know, totally bad. But what we normally like to do is, let me just unground it. What we normally like to do is we need to tie it down to one of another. Now, in real life, these two are actually not tied together here. They actually tied together with the next component I'm going to bring in. But in good CAD practice, we will lock these two down. A super useful tool in the drop-down is as-built joint. Now, as-built joint just really means that if all your components are placed the way you like them with one another, you can actually kind of like skip trying to create joints. You can literally just click on both of them and join them together. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say as-built joint. I'm going to select the one we locked down. That one can't go anywhere. And then I'm going to select the one that we want to lock the two together. And when I do that, you'll see those two components selected over here. They are now rigid, but I can actually change that. I could change it to revolute. Now, if I hit revolute, I actually have to select a axis for them to snap around. I could do sliding. They don't have to select a sliding axis for them. You can select all different things. For this case here, we're just going to select that rigid. It kind of shakes to show us it's rigid. Hit OK, and now these are locked down to one another. Now, you can't really see anything on the model right now that these are locked together, other than you now have a joints folder over here. And if I expand that, you will see that our rigid joint between the two is actually sitting right there, showing us that it's rigid. But this is the best practice. Then when you're bringing things in to putting things together, lock them down as you go along. Now, I talked to you that the next thing that comes in is the footrest. So let me right click on that one and say insert to design. And when I bring that one in, you will see that again, it comes in placed where that I drew it up compared to the origin in the CAD file. Now, if you want to, you can drag it and you can kind of move it around if you want to, and it will actually let you move it around. Now, if I hit OK like this, you get a one time where you can move it without getting this revert to position. If I hit move again and I move it, hit OK, now you will actually see that I get this revert or capture position. So when it first gets inserted, you can move it around without getting these. Again, I'm going to talk about these a little bit later. All right, so it was pretty easy to use this assembly joint after I rotated that crossbar around. This one is a little bit different. Here, we're actually going to be using the joint command sitting up here. So I'm going to click on joint, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to select on the inside of this area here, and I'm going to hold control down. If I hold control or command on a Mac, then I have locked down where this little coin can move. See, I'm going to let go of control again. And now you will see that wherever I'm selecting, it's kind of hard sometimes to get that coin to show up that we want to select. Like when I'm moving away, it goes away. But if I hold over this face, you can now see the coin is visible in the center of the hole. And if I now hold down control or command on a Mac, now it doesn't matter where I select. I can now go over and I can move that around. I'm going to select the top face on this one. And then I'm going to move over here. And I'm now going to place on one of the side holes here. And you'll see I get another card. I'm going to hold down control on Windows, Mac, it's command, and I'm going to select this one. And we will now see that the ring comes in, but it's actually not the way I want it. So be aware of there's a flip command over here. I'm going to flip it, and now it is where I want it here. So that has now been placed. I'm going to hit OK to that, and you will now see this has been placed with another rigid command. Now, some of you guys are saying, well, wait a minute, like, don't you need to lock it down more places? Because in real life, you have to put screws in it to hold. These two will tip over, the legs will tip over if you don't put at least 2 or 3 screws in here. Well, because we're doing these joints this way, this is rigid with one joint over here because everything else kind of lines up here the way that this is modeled. Remember again, I'm not trying to put this together to get the reaction of how it is in real life. I'm trying to put it together so I can make an assembly drawing to show how this is put together. So the screws and things like that will indicate this. So everything has been locked down so far, and this is good. We can see how we're kind of like are bringing these different components in this way. Now, the next thing we're going to bring in is something that sometimes happens. Is actually, you can see here that these are components. Now we're actually going to bring in an assembly. This is a seat bearing assembly that I modeled up. I'm going to right click, insert into current, and you will see that this seat bracket comes in here. This was one I modeled up myself. Now you will see if you look over here that this is an assembly. It has multiple components. I'm just going to drag it out of a little bit out of this whole thing so we can see it up here. Hit OK to that. And we're going to place that here. Now, so far, we used the rigid group to put these two together because we could place those without a problem. This ring was kind of like over in space, and we really just placed that with the joint command up here. This one here is going to be a little different. Now, the way that I'm going to put this together, and now we come to the first thing I'm going to show you that is kind of new, and you maybe have already noticed some of this. One of the things that is new, if I open up a joint, is that our joint menu now looks a little bit different. So one of the things we have here is that little simple coin. You will also see that we can now do something between two faces. So this was kind of a nice enhancement. So if I select two faces, I can select on this face and I can select on this face here. And then I got to show you where we want to snap. If I select this little vertex here, I can actually place a coin right between those two faces. This is super nice. The way we used to do this was click on a coin, like I would place a coin here, but then I would have to like drag handles down, or place it with handles or something like that, or using a joint origin that I'm going to show you just in a second. So that's one thing. The dialog now have a between faces. The other thing it has is two edges intersection, and I love this one. Especially, I don't know if you're like ever doing inserting parts in a vise or something like that. So two edge intersection is that now we can click on this edge, we can click on this edge, and we now get a joint there. That is super helpful. But another thing you need to know is how to insert what is called a joint origin. Now, a joint origin, we use that if we don't have full control and we want to have full control over where to place our origin. So what I want to do is I want to make a joint between the center of this slot here and the hole on this frame. That's why it's kind of like lining up. The problem I have right now is if I go here and say joint origin, and I go over to that slot, spin it around here, you will see that I can snap to these points here, but because I don't have any geometry, I can't place one in the center on this side here. Now, I could cheat, and I'm going to show you that. You don't have to insert a joint origin. If I selected this point right here, so I'm going to select this point, and then go over and select the center of the stool, like this, I could, and this would be okay, it's not bad, but I could grab this arrow and I could move this over, and I know this slot is 8 millimeters, so I could move it over 4 millimeters like this, and I would actually get the right joint. So you could do it like this. But I wanted to show you, I'm going to cancel this, I wanted to show you that you also have an option to create these joint origins. To do that, I'm going to open up the design. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to open up this bearing. And what we're working on here is the bottom 2 plate here. So I'm just going to make that active. And I actually already have them in here. So I'm just going to find them here, and I'm actually going to delete them. So I'm going to delete these and delete this. Like that. So what you can do is you can insert these joint origins. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to say joint origin, and then I'm going to select that same edge you just saw me selecting before, but now I'm just going to move that over, in this case -4, to place one right there, and that gives me a joint origin right there. And I'm going to go and do the same thing over here. So I'm going to right click out the space here and say repeat joint origin. Select that, oh, not that edge. Right click, repeat joint origin, select there, move that over -4. And now I have those joint origins there. Now I'm going to save this with the joint origin visible. Let's go back to the top of the assembly and say save. And we're going to give it here. I'm going to say added joint origin. How do you spell origin? Like that. Now if I go into our assembly, I actually get an update because we deleted and we saved. So I'm going to hit that. It's going to update everything. And now you can actually see those, those joint origins appearing there and there. That was who we created. So now I can go in and say joint, and now I can select those. Joint origin there. Let's find the top of this one. Right. Zoom in. Whoops. Right there. And that goes into place there. Now I can change the motion if I want to. Right now it's rigid and actually is placed exactly where we want. But let me just do a revolute just so I can show it to you. So now this is moving like this. Let's repeat it again. Joint. Oh, now I get this capture position. So now let me show you what this capture position does. So you've seen me hit continue and it flies back to wherever it was when I moved it. If I hit capture position, it's actually going to give me a timeline down here, and it's going to keep it wherever I moved it to. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to select that there, we had that one, and then we select that one right there. And hit OK to that. And now that has been joined in. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to show you, now I have these captured down here. So that was because I moved it. I can actually click on this one here. I can leave it, or I could delete that one out of there. I don't need that. Let me show you that again. So the assembly, because this is a bearing, I can actually move the bearing around here. If I let go, I get this capture position or revert. If I hit revert, it goes back, nothing is recorded. If I move it over here and I say capture position, then it will stay, but now it's recorded down the timeline. If I select this one and hit delete, then it goes back. So why didn't it go back before? Well, we added that joint there. We're getting there. All right, the last thing I'm going to insert in here is the seat itself. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to insert this seat here. Right click, insert into current position. Again, you will see that it comes in the middle of somewhere, and you could leave it, or what I like to do, because we get this free move, we can move it up like this, place it like that, and then we can go ahead and we can put that in with a joint. So I'm just going to select center of the screwed hole here to maybe that origin right there. Could work as a spinning around, that's fine. Hit OK. And then we're just going to go ahead and select the opposite. I think it's this one over here. Joint. All right, so select that coin right there. Move that over there, hit OK. And now that seat is there. What's kind of cool about this, let me just hide some of these joints. Kind of cool about this is you see this is a leather seat, so there's some texture on it. You can actually see that the seat does rotate along with that. All right, revert back to position. The last thing I wanted to show you in this assembly is there's actually like these leg blocks. So I'm going to insert that into the design, and we get one that comes in down here. Now I'm not going to move it out of position. I'm just going to hit OK, so you can see it's kind of sitting out of place. I'm going to do the joint. I'm going to hover over this face, hold down Control, select that center, and then I can tip over, hold down Control, select that, and that one is locked into place. And then I'm actually going to pattern this. So we can go over here and we can say we're going to, because we need 3 more of them, and I'm lazy, so I can go ahead and say circular pattern. I want to select a component. I'm going to select that leg block right there, and an axis to rotate around. And that could actually just be this round piece. We need 4. I'm going to hit OK, and now we got these 4. But watch out. This one is not moving anywhere because that one got a joint. But these was just patterned, and these will absolutely move around. So we're going to go back to what we did in the beginning. We're going to use the as-built joint because we have everything where we want it right now, and say we want to make a rigid between this one and this one. And we're going to do, say OK to that, right click, repeat, build this joint, this one to this one, hit OK to that, right click, repeat, build this joint, this one to this one. And now they are all locked down and they are not moving. So this is bottom-up assemblies. What is great when you have all the different components. But you saw me earlier where I had to go in and I made some changes to this assembly. A new thing that was added that is really neat. Now they're still building on this. There's more to come to it. And I could not have done the joint origin as I showed, but you can actually do other things in here. And that's a new edit in place that was introduced, what is super helpful. See, on this assembly, it's pretty easy, as many of you will tell me, because I only have a handful of components in here, and they were all put in a folder, and I modeled them all up, and that's all good. But sometimes you end up with these linked components out here that could be all different kinds of places, and maybe you have all different kinds of files. What is new is that I can go over to this leg plug, and you will see that I get a pencil here. And I can actually click on this pencil over here in the tree, and when I do that, I get a blue box around my window. And what I'm doing, I get this little checkbox up here. What I'm doing right now is I am actually looking at the model as it was if I opened it up by itself. And it's going to react just like if I open up the model by itself. What I can do is I can actually go down here and I can edit that part. So I can click on the sketch and I can say edit sketch, and it will actually edit this part in the sketch. I have all the tools that you would normally expect. So now I can go in and say I want to add a fillet to the bottom here, and let's add a 1 millimeter fillet, hit finish sketch, and now you will see that I have a fillet underneath here that I did not have before. Now what happens here is this is like looking out on, and I had to open up this file by itself. So what is really great about this is that this gives you an option to edit parts in a bottom-up assembly without having to go out and try to find that part and edit it and then go back to the assembly and update. When I click here, you will see that this part file becomes rev4. So when I click here, it will update them all. And when I hit save, I probably have to hit save. This is our new bottom file. So we're going to say edit fillet in this one. You will now see that this is going to be revved up to, where did it go? There, rev 4. And now all of them have been updated and got that 1mm fillet. So this is a huge, nice thing to have inside of Fusion now. This is something that I don't know of any other CAD software you can do, where you can actually, in a bottom-up assembly, you can edit in place. So you can edit the part that exists outside the assembly. Normally, you can only do it with a part that is inside the assembly. And of course, since it's version, I can click here and I can actually go back to, we saw it with version 3 before. I can click on that over here and I can promote that back again. What's going to make this version 5. Now I get a warning in my assembly that things have been updated. And if I click on that button up here, now everything will update back to where it did not have a fillet. So good job to the development team to create this edit in place in bottom ups, because that's going to be super helpful. You don't have to go out and try to find things. You can now have a raw, like this leg plug, a pretty raw model that you use as a start, and then you could go in and you could actually finish things in here. I hope that was useful. So this is what we call bottom-up assembly. Now let's go in and talk about top-down. What is, some people would say, is probably, we don't need this bearing right now. It's probably a little bit more, I don't want to say it's advanced, but it's a different way to do things inside of Fusion. So I'm going to open up a new file, and it's an empty file. What we're going to do is we're going to turn this into an assembly right away, but we're actually going to build our design within that, and then maybe also add some of the other components in here. The problem with the bottom up that we just looked at is that you have to build all the different files within relation of each other, but in separate files where you can't really relate them to one another. What top-down lets you do is let you do it in relation to one another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and say New Component. And when I do that, I actually get a new function in here, what will let me decide if I want it to be an external component or an internal component. Now, before these new updates, you could only do kind of like internal, but now you can actually choose to make it an external, what is kind of handy. Internal, and let's start out and do the seat, for example. So if we do the seat as an internal component, like that here, you will now see that I get a seat. So let me model up the seat from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead here and create a new sketch from the side here. And I apologize, when I reverse engineered this, I'm trying to do this in metric, but I need to buy myself a metric tape ruler. I don't have a tape measure. I don't have that. So I only have English. So I'm going to do this in, well, everything is in metric, but I'm actually going to say this seat is actually 3 IN thick. Tab. And then I'm going to make it 7 IN, right, like that. So 76.2. I'll probably round that up when I have a tape measure. I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch, and I'm going to go and do a revolve. And so I've selected the shape, and I'm going to revolve around that center line. And there we have the seat. Okay, and there was a little bit of a fillet up here. So we can put that in, 10 millimeter fillet on it. And then on the back side, we had those 4 screw holes we used to mount before. So let's do those. I'm going to select the sketch on this back side. And I'm going to do a center rectangle on the back up here. And again, I apologize, 5.5 IN, inches, tab, 5.5 IN. So 140 by 140 millimeters. Here was a trick I showed in the last video, I think it was, that nobody knew. If you double click on a on something that is a chain, it will actually pick the whole thing. And now we can turn it over to be a construction geometry over here. And then I'm going to finish that sketch, and I am going to use the hole command. I'm going to select placement of multiple holes. There's going to be a hole, there's going to be a hole, there's going to be a hole, and there's going to be a hole. I'm making the holes a simple hole. They are threaded, 25 millimeters deep, and it's an M6 down here. Hit OK, and now we have the seat. The only thing we don't have is the texture on it. Let's right click and do appearances. And I'm going to search here black leather. We have this black leather right there. Let's drag that up on this one. There we go. All right. So inside our assembly right now, we have one seat. Now here's the neat thing about doing top down is that I can actually now use this as a reference to model the rest of this part, where when I did it in my bottom up assembly, I kind of had to know or remember when I did this bearing here where those slot locations should be. But what we can do in the top down way here, let's just save it as a top down. So let's save that as a new top down. Keep things separate. Now what I can do is if I create a new component, so right click up here and say new component, again, I could make it external. Let's just make that external so we can see it later on. I'm going to call that new, I'm just going to call this a plate, new plate. Because I'm not going to do the whole bearing thing because that takes a little bit more work. So let me just create that. And when I do that, you will see that my seat turns transparent because I'm in this new plate, and you'll see that it's already know it's linked. But I can now use the seat as a reference for these holes. Check it out. If I go ahead and say I want to create a new sketch, I can now click on that. And then now I can use those holes I had in my previous assembly as my reference. So now I can go in here and we can do a center rectangle like this. Just go up here. So let's make it 200 tab by 200 millimeters. Looks pretty good, right? Now it's only showing you the sketch here, but I can use these holes as a reference in this part. So if I go into the slot command and we'll select the center slot, I can actually go and find the center of that hole right there. It's super cool. And I can now create a slot that is located in that center hole. I'm going to give it some dimensions. D, and before I made this 8, so let's make that 8. I'll show you another trick if you didn't know this. If I go ahead here and I select this arc and this arc, you see how my dimension comes from the center of those arcs? That's probably not what I want to show. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to hit the dimension tool. Oh, get out of it. There we go. Hit the dimension tool. I'm going to right click on this arc and select pick circle tangent. Select that arc, and look at this. Now it is actually tangent. Somebody give me a ooh if you didn't know that. Okay, exit out of that. And now I'm not sure why it's still blue. Oh, it's not blue. Yes, it is blue. Oh, it can still move up and down. So I never locked it to that hole there. That was my mistake. So let's hit a midpoint of this line. No. Let's make sure we hit this line to this. There we go. Now it's locked down. We could do 3 more of those, or we could use what we did before, where we used the circular pattern. That also works for sketches. And if you remember from last week's video, we had the whole drag a square in the yellow direction or doing it in the orange direction. You can go back and look at that video. So we're going to select this one here, and my center point is going to be the center here. And we wanted how many? We want 4 of them. Hit OK. And now we have the 4 slots placed. And we know that they are in the right area. So when I finish the sketch and I hit the extrude, we can be certain that this plate here is in the right location for those holes. So that is the nice thing about this bottom up. Now, or the top down, sorry. Now, this one is linked out, but you will actually not see it in my list until I save this document. So when I hit save up here, let me just get out of this. When I hit save, you will see this new here. So save it. You will now see we get the new plate out here as an external. I should also now add that things are still moving around in here. So we still have to do the same principles we used before, where we lock one down by grinding one, and then we can use the as-built joint to make sure that these two are locked down like this. So you saw how we created the seat first. No kind of, we just drew that up and created that as a component. We grounded it. We created this new one as a new part, but this one we can actually now make it external. What is nice that if you know you're going to use this plate in other versions, that you can actually do that. You can make it in other versions. But we can still, in this top down, we can still bring in components like we did before. So we could go down here, right click and say insert into current design, and this leg will come in, and we could now place that leg with a joint to get that to the right place, right? So we could go in here now and say, all right, so let's do that. So we could either do what we did before. We could go over and say joint. We could either choose to select the top of this, and now we could select on this edge, and then remember how I used the arrow to move it over, -4, right? We could do that. Now if I flip it, oh, actually I think here in this case here, I think I'm gonna have to rotate it around. Let's try to go, yeah, it's gonna rotate it around like that. And then we could place the other one over here. Let's see if I got my measurements correct. Let's just revert back. The joint between here. This might actually give me a problem. I don't know if it's gonna to here. And then we can move that one over the -4. Yeah, like that, right? So we could do it like that, or we could do what we did earlier. If we go back into that new plate we have here, we edit that one. Actually, now I want to run into the same. Now it's now I want to run into the same problem I had before, that I cannot do a joint origin from the edit in place, and when I've already saved it, it became an edit in place. So that actually defeats that. So what we're going to do is open up this plate here. Sorry. And we could now go in and do a joint origin like that. Move that over 4. And if I save that, maybe now I just made it a little confusing for somebody. I apologize. But this was one of the, I guess this is one of the ones by saving it out as an external and still trying to use edit in place. I can't insert joint commands. But if I go back to our new top-down assembly and I update this, hopefully I placed it in the right place. I did not. So now the question is, what is what? It's sitting right over there. Okay. So it's actually probably one of these over here. Oh, hang on. Joint. I think it's this one. We could have done something like this. The end result is theoretically the same. If you move it, if you're creating the joint origin, or if you are doing it in here. The biggest difference is, for this here, I would probably just move it like I did when I originally set in this. So now I got the joint origin sitting right there. When I originally put this in. But sometimes you don't have that option and you gotta use the joint origin. So we're gonna do a joint between oops, that one, and then our new joint origin right there. And that one actually came into the right place, so now I can actually cheat. Edit. Instead of having it as a circular where I can revolve around, I can just make it rigid right now, and that would actually be good enough to have it in place. So top down lets you model the seat up. Let us insert, also create a plate that we could reference holes from. So this is the really nice thing about top down, is we can reference everything down. Now, the last thing of what's new I want to show you before I go into what I call the 2.5. What the 2.5 is what I call skeleton modeling also. I just want to leave you with that. But the last thing I want to show you that is new is actually in the derived function. Now the derived function, let me just get out of this plate here. The derived function is a new function that was added probably about 1.5 years ago. And that is great when you model one thing up, like the seat, for example, and you now want to make a new version of the seat, but you don't want to, you could do a save as. That's what most people would do. Click here and do a save copy as, a save as file. But if you want to keep this as our basic seats, we want to create a new version of this, but any changes we're making to the original is going to the new model, but not backwards, we can use Derive. So let me just show you how that Derive works. So it's sitting under Create. So I'm going to go ahead here and say that I want to create a derived. I'm just going to save here. And I want to use the seat as my derived. So I'm going to hit OK to that. That's going to open up a new, it had made a copy of that original seat. It's linked from our original assembly here to the new file, but anything we're doing in this file will not affect what is in this file. Let me show you. It's maybe easier. So I'm going to go ahead here. We're going to make a more advanced seat. I'm going to go into Sculpt, and I'm going to make like a surface like this. That's maybe a little long. Let's make a more advanced seat here. Like these points, right click, edit form. I'll drag that up a little bit there, maybe over a little bit like this. Let's select the center one. Let's drag that up. All right, so this is in Sculpt, right? Now, if I hit Finish Form, I now have a surface body. What is that form I just created? And then I have my original seat. Here's a neat little trick if you didn't know it. There is a replace face inside of Fusion. So replace face. And what is our source face? That is this one. And what is our target? That is this surface here. Hit OK. And nothing really seems to have happened until I hide the surface. And now you will see that I just created a new seat. And we can hit save to that. Call that the new seat. And you will now see we get that new seat. Now this is its own model. But the trick with Derive is that we can actually go, and if we're making changes to, see, this seat is still the same. I don't have any warnings or anything. This still remembers this is one seat. This is our new seat. But if I, for example, made a change to these holes in this seat, because somebody drilled, they gave this job to Lars, and Lars drilled the holes in the wrong location, we can actually get them pushed over to this seat over here with the Derive. What is new in Fusion is that now you can actually find that model. You couldn't used to have to do that. If I go to this body here, our Derive body, and right click, there's now an open source that will open up that file so you can find it, what is kind of handy. So let's go and edit that original seat here. Go into our original hole sketch. It's hard to see because it's black. So let's make it 3.5. Hit finish seat. So now what is happening here is that I screwed everything up. Now the holes in here are kind of, you can see the screw holes all messed up. Because I actually did it in, I should have done, why did I make it black? Why did I make it black? Where's that dimension now? There. 3.5 inches, because I started out in inches and then I made it to, all right, finish that. Now, you will actually see that I blew up those holes. But if I go to our new seat, oh, I gotta save it. I have to save it. Then in my new seat over here, I will now get a warning down here, show you down here. And if I right click on that, I can actually say get updates. And now you will just see that those holes moved in. So before they were, you know, they were rectangle, they were a square, and now they're a rectangle. So that's one way you can use that Derive. So the new thing in this one is you can right click and you can say open source and you can bring that in. All right. So which one is the best? Let me just stop here before I do the 2.5. So which one is the best? The best one, if you have all your parts modeled up, then bottom up is probably the easiest one. You just stick them all in, you join them all up, you place them all the right places. I wish I had had more time so I could also have placed the fasteners in here and done it the right way, maybe some other day when life don't catch up with me. That's easier if you have all your parts, but it makes it hard to model this up because you have to know remember what all the screw locations should be. The top down is really nice because when we place those first holes in that seat, we could use that to do the plate, and then we could still bring other things in if we had other things. So this kind of like gives you up and down. The last one I want to show you is what I call skeleton modeling. And skeleton modeling actually is kind of the same as top down, but we're starting out by using a sketch to drive everything from. So when I did this top down originally, you saw when I did the seat, well, I placed my sketch in here for that seat like we're normally modeling. Skeleton modeling means that I can start a sketch here, and let's do that seat again. So I'm just gonna do the seat, and I'm gonna do, again, it was 3 inches tall, tap, 7 inches wide. I promise you I will find on Amazon a tape measure that has millimeters, so you're not gonna see me mess around with this. What is nice about this in this kind of environment is this is going to be the revolve for the seat, but we could also actually model in the plate. So maybe I model in the plate here, and the plate was 8 millimeters by 100, because this is currently, right now I'm just kind of like doing half of it. And then I'm going to show you a trick that you may not know. If you know this trick, you're awesome. If you don't, let me open up one of these legs. I'm going to show you something. Here was the legs that I modeled up. Now if we go in and we edit the first sketch, this was the sketch I used as my path to do half of the leg. Did you know that if I highlight that sketch, we're in the leg part, I do a Control C. Let's go back into our assembly in here, or our skeleton model, and I do a Control V. Look at this. There is the sketch. Did you know you can copy sketches from one place to another? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. So now I can actually move this one over here, and I can go ahead and I can say, I can use constraints in here. So I'm just going to say, okay. And then I'm going to say, I want this and this to be vertical. And then I actually know that this tube's going to be, I'm going to make it 22 millimeters. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do a dimension from here to here. I'll make that 22. Okay. So what you've seen me doing here is actually sketching up for 3 different parts in here. So let me start putting this together. The nice thing about this is almost like a paper napkin. And now we can start creating our models. So I'm going to go ahead here and say right click and new components. And we're going to call this the fancy seat. Just to call it something different. I'm going to make it internal. Okay. And in that component, I'm actually going to go ahead here and do a revolve. I'm going to select this profile with, there's my seat. Could add the filler on if I wanted to. Like that. There's one component. Now you see that the sketch disappeared. That's just because I got to show it again. So now we could go ahead and do as, so this, oh, I didn't name it. Sorry. Fancy seat. I don't know what I did with that. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new component. New components. A new component. Call that something. We're going to call that plate. There's the plate. Now I can go ahead and do an extrude. I'm going to select that area there. Go out like this. Let's go symmetrical. And that is going to be 50. Now that plate is active right now, so I can actually go ahead here and do a mirror of this to this face. Oh, then it's going to be bigger. All right, never mind. Well, there's the plate. And let's finish up the leg here. Now, I'm missing my my profile. I could put that in the sketch if I wanted to. I could also put that into a component if I wanted to. So if I go ahead here and I right click and say new component, I'm going to call this one leg, like this. I could, inside of this file, say I want to create a sketch. And where do I want to create the sketch? I want to create it down there, but I don't really have anything to sketch on. So one thing you could do is if I select this face here, start my sketch on, I could do a project, select that profile. So now I have that as a projected sketch. And then that will be my, my path. And then to do my profile, well, we could do it down where I did it before. It would maybe be easier. I do it both ways. So one way we could do it is we could say a new sketch for a profile, do that right there. And then C for circle, make that 22 millimeters. And then I could theoretically place that over here somewhere. Let's say this to this. And we could do, make that 11. Finish that sketch. And now I could do a sweep where the profile is going to be the circle. The path is going to be this. And there you will see that leg. Or, let's delete that, delete that. We could also use this offset plane. Select that. And make that to this area. Oh. No. I thought I could just snap it to that point. Okay, well, if there's not a way, we're going to do it another way. Going to the construction plane in here. we could use plane along a path. And select this one, and then just drag it down. It will stop when it comes to the endpoint, what is there. And then I'll just draw it down there. I don't care. It's good to see me struggle, right? 22. Go and make that to that. D for dimension from here to here. Make that 11. Finish that. Do the same thing as we did before. Do a sweep from here. Our path is this. And then what I did was, you probably noticed, was I also used a mirror for that. And then I had this, the metal is actually compressed. And in our original file, you saw that I made that with cutout. It doesn't look very pressed down. But I wanted this, I wanted this to be a tube. So what I did in the end with the compressed in there was that I just shelled it out by clicking here and make it 2 millimeters shelled. And now it's a shell thing. The nice thing, and then I'll stop this video. The nice thing, this is getting long, about this technique is that I have everything up here in one sketch, right? So I modeled everything out of my key items, what is inside this sketch, what makes it a lot easier many times to kind of make changes down the road when there's changes, because there's always changes. All right, the 4 things that I try to highlight in an hour. Was this too much? I hope not. You let me know in the comments area, please. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. It's okay. Give me the honest answer. I think next we gotta look at drawings, but these what's new, they're hard. So we had the new joint dialog, where we can actually now do intersections. We can do between planes. We had the edit in place. This is really cool when you're doing that bottom up, the old style, that you can just edit your components from in there. You definitely got to test that out. When we're creating a new component inside of a Fusion file, you can now choose if you want to save it external or keep it internal. And then if you are using that Derive function, then there's now an option where you can right click on the derived file and it will let you open the source file. Because sometimes you made a Derive, then you couldn't remember where the heck is the source file? You have to go look for it. These videos are getting longer and longer and longer. I hope you're bearing with this. Don't forget, down in the description area, you can find a new way to email me. Love to hear from you. Love to see some of the examples that what you're using Fusion for. Until the next time, I hope that you have an awesome, awesome day. Take care, folks.